Let me start with a quick story. My guest today once found himself sitting in a meeting with Steven Spielberg. Picture the scene. Spielberg is at the head of the table. Studio executives are there. Writers are there. They're discussing a scene in a movie involving aliens. Spielberg suggests an idea, and then something unexpected happens. A junior guy in the room, basically the coffee runner, speaks up and says, actually, I think we did something like that in another movie last year. What if we did it this way instead? The room went silent because the kid just corrected Steven Spielberg. Spielberg paused, thought for a second, and said, yeah, that's better. Let's do that. No ego, no defensiveness, just a focus on the best idea winning. My guest today, Steven Puri, never forgot that moment. What struck him wasn't just Spielberg's humility, it was something deeper. The best leaders don't just work hard, they create the conditions where great ideas can emerge. And those ideas often come from a mental state psychologists call flow, a state of deep concentration where distractions disappear, time disappears, and you do your best thinking. Now, when you hear the word flow, you might think about artists or athletes. But Steven argues that leaders need flow just as much as anyone else, especially leaders in industries like construction, where the culture is all about grind, speed, and constant activity and firefighting. But sometimes the move that beats your competition doesn't come from grinding harder. It comes from stepping back, thinking deeply, and seeing something others don't. How to get into that state of thinking and produce those ideas, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Let's dive right in. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Steven, welcome to Construction Genius.
I hope this is an entertaining and maybe actionable episode. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah, let's do it. Most people associate this idea of flow with artists and athletes. How should leaders redefine flow in the context of strategy and decision making?
You know, it is a very good and very technical answer for that question. Let me set the table first to make sure we're all talking about defining flow as what it is, right? Flow state, which has become very popular in the past few years, really comes from this Hungarian-American psychologist, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And you're right. He was talking about athletes and artists, but also like scientists and inventors. And he had a thesis. This was almost 40 years ago. He said, you know what? If you talk to these guys who are at the top of their field, when they talk about the concentrated states where they do the thing that makes them famous, the thing we know them for, strangely, they talk about it in very similar ways, even though what they're doing is very different. He's like, there's something there. So, you know, he went off, did the research, the whole stuff, did the interviews, and he wrote the book Flow, from whence we get the term flow state. And he said the most beautiful thing that I think will inform this conversation. He said, many people with whom I spoke have their own word for it. Being in the zone, being, you know, in a thought experiment, being deep in thought, right? Going deep. He said, I chose flow because it was the most beautiful metaphor for what I found, which is we are all on the river paddling to move ourselves forward. But if you align your boat with the current, it carries you. You go further and faster. And that is what these high performers have figured out how to do and do repeatably. So when you think about this from the point of view of, hey, I am a leader of an organization, and how do I take advantage of this? There are really two things I think that are applicable here. One is strategic decisions, as you've talked about in our earlier conversation. Strategic decisions can be rushed. There's often a dopamine hit around having to make high stress decisions repeatedly and all that, which don't always lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes intuition and experience are great, but sometimes there's something about that. Look out the window for a moment and think deeply. And that's where flow comes in. Flow is for those moments when you actually need to let your brain go deeper than it does in a stress situation. So we can go more, I've been talking for a bunch. We can go more deeply into that, but that's, I think, the short answer to your question.
So this concept of flow may feel alien to a lot of my listeners here, construction leaders and company owners, because when I think of construction, I think more of grind than flow.
True.
And I think a lot of the audience, they need to be able to give themselves permission to get into this flow state. But the challenge is carving out the time to do that. So what is the relationship between having time and being able to be in this flow state?
Okay. So the Hungarian guy we spoke about, since he wrote his seminal work on this, right? We live in a world where we benefit from that standing on the shoulders of giants thing, right? A lot of people have spent the last 40 years researching different parts of this. One part of that research is, how does the brain get into flow? It takes 15 to 23 minutes for your brain to drop in. And this state of flow, as Mihai wrote, he said, it's an interesting state, and it's been observed in fMRI machines. This is not like woo-woo, kind of like hippie stuff. They've taken people and put them in MRIs and watched as they get into this deep state where they do amazing things. Like their prefrontal cortex sort of shuts down and they get immersed in the work. And this is what Mihai wrote. He said, number one, you lose track of time. Number two, you lose track kind of self. You lose yourself in the work. Distractions fall away. And number four, at the end of it, not only have you done your best work quickly, but you can actually feel uplifted as opposed to depleted.
Yeah.
Which is super interesting. Now, my background is very different than a lot of your listeners. I've been executive at a couple of motion picture studios. I've run some tech companies, some successfully, some, not successfully. Yeah. But this pattern of high performance leaders understanding what the value is here, this is what I speak about frequently. Now, to bring this home, there are certain activities that lead to staff meetings and status reports and things like that. And I always joke about, if you ever seen Office Space, turning in your TPS reports on time.
Sure.
There's something to the management of just, hey man, I need to have your report Friday morning at 10, every Friday, right? Now here's the thing. When you think about those things that move your team or your organization forward in a leap, not just grinding it out every day, one more screw, those happen not because everyone's like, yeah, I was here yesterday, I did this, tomorrow I'm going to do this, thanks. It's because someone took the time, like you said, carved out the time to say, you know what? Yesterday I actually looked out the window for an hour and I thought deeply about what our competitor is doing. And I see the flaw in that. And let me tell you what our advantage is in that. And that doesn't come from turning in your TPS reports. It doesn't come from grind. That comes from doing that. Now, if you value that in your organization as a leader, you have to then create time for that.
Well, why would you value it? Because the audience values putting in work in place safely, quickly, with great quality so they can make money.
Yes.
Why would I value then taking time away from doing that to get into this state that you're describing?
Well, because there is a very established path of linear sort of progression. I'm grinding it out a little more each day, right? And then there's the state of, oh, we just leapt over the competition. Oh, we just created a different way of doing this thing that we grind. And that generally doesn't come from just grinding. That comes from taking a pause to say, what have I learned? What have we learned? What else is happening in the world? And we can talk about sort of the brain chemistry of this if you want. And I will give you a fun story from another business, which is film.
Yeah, give me a fun story from another business.
Okay. So when I was a young punk coming out of college, right? My first real job in film was I was at an ad agency that did trailers for movies, right? Studios would call up. It was run by these two guys who were very well regarded in the business as like madmen of film.
Yep.
My job was movie would come in and I would assign it to a writer producer. I'd call up Eric, go, Eric, you did that great job on the Will Ferrell comedy last year for Sony. Sony's got another Will Ferrell thing. Take this home, watch it, write a trailer, right? So one of my two bosses, Jeff, comes in. For the purpose of this story, he calls me Stevie. He's the only person in my life that ever, he's the only person that ever called me Stevie, right? So he comes to my office and goes, Stevie, you know,
He didn't
Bart.
say Stevie baby, just Stevie?
No, just Stevie. No, just Stevie. And he's an amazing director, but like for some reason I was Stevie to him, the only person in my life, right? So he comes to my office and goes, hey Stevie, you know Bart, right? And I think for a moment, I'm like, there's a guy in the vault like who delivers tapes and film named Bart. I met that guy in the elevator, I think. Yeah. Is that the guy? He's like, yeah. I was like, why? He's like, you ever given him a trailer to write? I'm like, you're talking about the guy that picks up coffee at lunch and like picks up tapes and stuff. Like this guy, right? Jeff's like, yeah, I got an instinct about him, Stevie.
Interesting.
Jeff, your name is on the door. Who the hell am I? I'm some 20-year-old punk. Let me find some title that doesn't have an immediate deadline. Give it to him, right? 2 days later, Jeff's in my office. Hey, how's Bart doing? Jeff, he's never written a trailer before. Like, I'm going to give him until Monday and I'll check in, okay? Okay, fine, Stevie. What else did you give him? Jeff, he's never written a trailer. I gave him one movie. Jeff says to me, Stevie, let me explain to you how creativity works. It's always about the other thing. You give Bart one movie to work on, he's going to stare at that movie with little beads of sweat coming down his temples. He is going to write the most obvious B version of that ever, because the part of your brain that does the, ooh, chocolate and peanut butter, it's not the part you think you're thinking with. You have to give him another movie so that he'll have the great idea on this one. And can I tell you, in 20 years in film, at DreamWorks, Fox, Sony, running 3 tech companies, how many times I've seen Jeff proven correct. And the neuroscience behind that is you, at a very young age, have a default mode network, which is like the baby. It's the one that like looks at his cell phone, goes like, wonder what that tastes like, right? Like a baby would. As you get more mature, you have an executive mode network that executes action. I must turn in my report at 10 a.m. Friday. I must do my homework. I must drive the kids to school, right? And what's interesting is the executive mode is like the adult in the room.
Right.
And when it's busy, the default mode network gets to actually do that clever stuff. So I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Eric, but you ever have that weird, great idea while you were driving, doing the dishes, showering? It's because your executive mode network is busy and the default mode network could go, oh, okay, mommy's looking the other way. Let me go nuts. And then you go, oh, you know what I should write, do, change? Boom, that's why.
So what does giving him another movie have to do with creating a better trailer for the first movie? Help me understand that. I missed that.
Because he said, and I've seen this proven true so many times, as soon as you seed your imagination with, okay, there's a problem, I've got to write this funny trailer for the Will Ferrell comedy, I watched it, right?
Yeah.
And then you go and work on this other thing. Oh, we're doing a Seth Rogen thing.
I get it.
You're unconscious. Your default mode network goes, okay, I got you.
Yep.
While you're not looking, you're not bothering me. I'm going to tell you the Will Ferrell thing should be this.
Yeah. I get that. It's very interesting.
And it's applicable. I mean, this is a fun story because it comes from film and everyone loves film. But I think it is generally applicable when you're like grinding on something. Go do that other thing. Like Zuckerberg is famous for like going on walks. Right. He's like, he'll take people on walks to talk about the other thing, to have the idea on the big thing. And whether you like him or not, he's been successful at building a business.
Yep. No, I get that. So how much time a week should an executive set aside, in your opinion, to explore this idea of getting into a flow state? And then when they're there, what should they be working on?
Okay, fantastic question. This is not something where every day you're sitting around in flow, like floating in the pool with, your little Zen. This is something where you can say, you know what? I know it takes 20 minutes-ish to get into a flow state.
Yeah.
There are some conditions precedent. We're going to talk about them that'll help you get there. How much time should I budget for that? Because if you get interrupted, it takes you another 20 to get back, right? So you generally need like a minimum of an hour. So if you do this, this goes back to the original book that Mihai wrote. He said, let me tell you something. To get into flow, everyone I spoke to, there is something they're doing that they think is meaningful, that they have skills that apply. Like we talked about the Michael Jordan thing, It's like, this is Michael Jordan playing basketball. This is not Michael Jordan trying to paint, and it's not Picasso trying to play basketball. It is, you have to have skills that apply. You are challenged at doing it. You think it's meaningful. You have a way of getting feedback. Like you go back and watch, read, bounce it off another person, like that sort of thing. And he said, if you do that, then in an hour or 2 hours, you can actually come away with that feeling of like, wow, I've done something that could have taken me in a day. But you have to block distractions. Like you can't be picking up your phone. You can't be like, answering Slack messages or WhatsApps or whatever they're coming at you. You have to kind of treat it as sacred time. And it's weird because when you come out of flow, like I'll tell you, my first experience in flow, I didn't know what a flow state was. I was flying from Austin, where I live, to SF. And the next day I had a meeting with my team. There was an idea I wanted to kind of hack together, mock up so I could present and say, what if we built something like this? You guys can make it better, but do you like this, right? So I thought I'll get on the flight, mock it up in Figma, see if they like this kind of thing. Alaska runs that nonstop, get on the plane. Captain's like, hey kids, Wi-Fi's out. Whoops, sorry. See you in SF, right? We take off. About 15 minutes later, we're descending. And I think, oh, we're in Dallas, Fort Worth. Like there's a hydraulic. They're going to tell us when we're on the ground so we're not scared what's wrong. And we're going to get on another aircraft and get to SF. I look down, 2 hours and 40 minutes have gone by.
Right.
I had no concept of like the drink cart came by. What was the name of the dude in the seat next to me? But my designs were done. And after you've done this, I had mentally prepared myself for get in the Uber, get to the hotel lobby, grab a sandwich, go to the room, try and finish this shit before the morning, right?
Yeah.
In reality, I called a buddy of mine from the Uber. I was like, hey man, I have a free night. You want to have dinner? And it felt great to be ahead of my day rather than behind my day.
Yeah.
That was my first experience. And then later you do the reading, you're like, wow, if I could harness this. And like your question asks like, how much time do you need to spend? Less than if you do this not in a flow state. And it's not like every day you need to have a deep work session, but every now and then you're like, I need to solve some deep stuff.
Yeah. So it's interesting because like last weekend, I had to put a PowerPoint together for a presentation. And I got into that state and I used some music to help me to get there.
Aha.
So is that an important aspect of it, or is that just depends on the person? What about the environment that someone should be in? Because I mean, you're on a plane. If I'm on a plane, I'm not getting that much done on a plane. I know the Wi-Fi was out, so that helped, but I'm not getting much done. So help us with that part of it.
Okay. So the oral environment, by oral, AU oral, like super important. And there is a ton of research on this. So I'll tell you, for most people, the sweet spot is music that is 60 to 90 beats per minute. Certain key signatures, non-vocal. You're not singing along with Britney Spears or whomever you love, Eric, no judgments. Yep. And long melodic passages, right? Now, I'm going to tell you a funny story because, I created a website to help people get into flow, right? I have a bunch of friends who are film composers with a bunch of time on their hands, right? I handed them this research. Can you write like 1,000 hours of original music kind of to these specs, right? This is the middle of the road. We all have that one friend that listens to 90s gangster rap or whatever to get into flow. I'm not talking about them. They know their deal. God bless. So we throw up all these playlists, lo-fi, binaural beats, up tempo, down tempo, right? Funny thing, buddy of mine who is a audio mixer for LucasArts, he does the Star Wars games, calls me up. He goes, hey man, I just got back from Nepal. Okay, cool, Julian. What's up? He goes, my kid graduated from high school, got into a great school in California. Actually, not that far from you. And he's like, that was his graduation gift. He wanted to go to Nepal, took him. Here's the weird thing. We're in Kathmandu one day and it poured rain. Rained so hard we couldn't leave the hotel. And it sounded so good. It was this lush, beautiful, warm rain. I had some of my recording equipment there. I couldn't help but record. I recorded 2 hours of rain in the Himalayas. I got back. I don't know what to do with it, but I know you have that flow state app. Do you want to use it? We threw it up there quietly, just created a playlist that was not music. It was rain. We called it Himalayan Dream Rain. Just left it there, didn't announce it. It became the third most popular playlist in our entire catalog.
Right.
I run the platform. I could reach out to people and go, hey man, I see you're listening to this. Can you help me understand it? What's curious is this. If you reduced every answer I got about why do you listen to rain when we have like all this expensive music that we commissioned, right? It's like scientifically designed. Almost every person said some version of, it evokes in me this period of time that I associate with studying. Like, my grandmother raised me in Georgia.
Sure.
Oh, my parents had a lake house, that sort of thing. And it brings them back to that.
Yep.
And that I share with you because, you can listen to all the science and the designs. Brain FM's great. Endel's great. Like there are a lot, but you got to figure out what it is for you that triggers you into like, I'm deep.
All right, quick break to talk about my book, Construction Genius. This is what I want you to do. Go to Amazon, search for the book, read all of the 5-star reviews, because there's a ton of them, over 50 to be precise. And the reason I want you to read them is because real people wrote those reviews who've actually read the book, and it'll give you an idea of why you should go and buy a copy right now on Amazon. And here's the deal. If you purchase 10 or more copies for your company, and then send me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com, I'll come in via Zoom and do a 1-hour Q&A and a bonus training session with your team at no charge. I normally charge $4,500 for an hour of my time. And again, for you, I'll do it at no charge if you buy 10 or more copies of my book. And the reason you should buy it is all in the title. It's effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS, leadership, strategy, sales, and marketing advice for construction companies. So if you're in the construction industry, this book is for you. So you can get it on Amazon. You can also get it on Audible in the audio version as well, narrated by yours truly. And I know you'll really enjoy it. So go out and get the book. And now back to the interview. What about the location? Because if I'm at the office, for instance, perhaps I can't get into flow state because I'm always going to be interrupted.
Correct.
So location and then the time of day as well. Is that personal? Is it, what do you think there?
Okay, so let's pick up on the second one first. That's fair. Yeah. So chronotype.
Right.
It is a concept. You're more adept at certain kinds of things at certain times of day, right? Yes. First time I ran into this was around the same time I was young punk in film.
Right.
And there was a very established writer back then, this guy, Ron Bass, who had written Rain Man, My Best Friend's Wedding, like all this big movie star kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
He was famous, maybe infamous. He would not talk to his family in the morning. He's like, I'm not the dad who's like, who wants pancakes? Who needs a ride to school? He explained to his family. He said, you know what? When I start talking to you, I can't hear my character's voices in my head anymore.
Yeah.
Now he's pulling down 1.5, 2 million a script. His family's like, Dad, you go write the scripts in the morning, right? We'll make the pancakes. We good, right?
Yeah, right?
And he knew that in the afternoon, he was great with studio notes meetings, collabs with writers, talking to his agent, whatever it was. But he was so adept. And I remember thinking, because he was the first person I ran into that was this self-aware of what you said, their chronotype. I remember thinking, wow, that's what it looks like to be a $2 million writer. You're like, I know exactly, like being an athlete, I know what I eat, what time of day I eat, how much sleep I get, all that kind of stuff. Like, so if you look to get the most out of yourself, yes, know your chronotype. Simple to figure out. You don't need anybody's app, anything. Take a piece of paper, block out morning and afternoon, Monday through Friday. Do this for 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Jot down at a high level what you do. Meetings Tuesday morning, blah, blah. How do you, smiley face. I had to write a PowerPoint presentation Tuesday afternoon. And I'm telling you, you look at that after a week or two, it will jump out at you going, oh my God, I should be doing any sort of creation work, writing for the website, creating plans in the mornings. I should be doing afternoon meetings, or whatever that thing may be for you. You will see your patterns of when you're like, this sucked, and this is like sweet spot, really good.
Yep. What about the location? Is that important?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to give you another funny story. Hopefully this is entertaining for your audience. I know they're very technical, but so when I was coming up, I happened to produce the visual effects, the digital effects for Independence Day. We won the Academy Award for the visual effects. It was great for all our careers, right? So I became close with the producer, director, writer of the movie. We started, my first company, I started with the two of them. When they had to go write, they rented this villa down in Puerto Vallarta. I've never been there, apparently. White marble, $5 million villa in the hills, whatever, right?
Yep.
So when they were going to write this, Roland, the director, told his assistant, go rent that place, rent the villa. She came back, she's like, it's rented. And there was like this hue and cry around the office, like, oh my God, what are the guys going to do, right? And Roland called his entertainment attorney, John Deemer, and said, buy the villa. By Monday, Roland owned that house.
Right.
And I was talking to Dean about this. I was like, hey, maybe I'm just some poor kid from Virginia, but like, that seems a little extreme to go buy the house you can write. Dean said this to me. He said, you know what? There is a room there where in the morning the light comes in over the pool. And in that room, we don't think about our agents or cast availabilities or budgets. We write the movie that we'd want to go see.
Right.
He goes, that's why it's worth it to us. And, they came back 6 weeks later with the film that became the third highest grossing movie in history, right? So it was worth it to them because that got them in that mental space. You're right. If you're in an environment that's crowded, people coming in, all this stuff, it's going to be hard to be in flow. You may need to carve out a space somewhere when you go, hey, I need to do that thing that catapults our team ahead. Yeah, there's a time of day you do that. There's a place you do that. It's very important.
It's interesting. I think people are different, though. In, like you said, the time of day, everyone's different, it seems, or people are different. Also, the place. I know that if I go to like a cafe to try and think, it's never going to work. Whereas some people, they love going to a place where there's a lot of action going on, because it's almost as if that action is the distraction from distraction so that they can focus.
That is spot on. I'll tell you a funny thing. Remember that Rain playlist I told you about that became popular?
Yeah.
So I did what any business owner would do. Oh, Rain's popular. Let's launch the sounds of surf, the sounds of lakes, and none of them were really that popular.
Yeah.
It was just Rain. However, there's a member of our community on the website. She's a pretty well-known blogger out of the UK. She reached out to me. She said, hey, I saw you experimenting with these like naturescapes instead of music, and I wanted to ask you, I had a baby during the pandemic. I've always written my blog from this coffee shop somewhere outside London, right? I can't really go there with a 1-year-old. Like, it's not like the cool writer experience you used to have of the bustle of that. She's like, but do you have any options for me? So we looked around and we found a guy in Vienna, Austria, who had recorded his local coffee shop, all the little walla, the espresso, the plates clattering. We threw it up there. Incredibly popular, because you're right. For some people, it gives that oral environment that does drown, the noise drowns out the noise, as ironic as that sounds.
Yep.
So again, it's just self-awareness, man. If
Yeah,
it's 90s gangster rap, if it's the Wicked show soundtrack to the show, like whatever it is, but you find your thing and just stick with it.
So then with the time aspect of it, it takes 15 to 23 minutes to get into it, like you were saying. Obviously, we can't stay there all day, every day, but a good hour if we can get it. Is that about the right amount of time?
Hour is fantastic time, because it'll take you 20 minutes to sort of drop in, like your cortex kind of shuts down, blah, blah. And totally, if you have an hour's work of flow work, that's pretty impressive every day.
So let's say I'm a construction company owner and I want to be able to think about an issue. Maybe it's a people issue, maybe it's a process issue, maybe it's a project issue.
Yep.
Do I pick one issue and then just kind of lay it out on the table, or what do I do? How do I go about it?
Yeah, generally so. So we've covered a lot of ground so far in our chat, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to block that time out. So no one's setting meetings with you, Slack, texting, what's happening, anything, right? Okay. Yep. So you set that time, your time block, right? You're going to have a clear task. Again, going back to Mihai's research, like flow happens when there's something that you think is meaningful that you're going to work on, right? That's when you lose yourself in it and you come up with the aha thing, right?
Yeah.
And you do need to do it in an environment that is not going to distract you. And that may be, for some people, that is going for a walk. That is driving. That is being in a certain room at home where you just go deep.
And so that idea of meaningful, it's interesting because at times there's tasks that we have to get done that aren't meaningful to us, perhaps, but they're meaningful to other people and they're necessary.
Yeah, you're probably not going to get in a flow.
Yeah, you're not, huh?
No, you have to believe it. When he talks about, I mean, and again, you were laughing about artists and athletes and all that, right? But like when you talk about like Picasso standing back from Guernica and going like, is this huge canvas capturing the horror of war? He has to believe it's not someone assigned him to go do that. He has to say, what's happening is awful. I need to say something,
Yeah. So it's almost as if you have to find things that you really have your ego invested in.
Yeah.
Or you have a real strong reason. Because I know when I was putting this PowerPoint together, number one, obviously my ego's invested in it, because if I don't produce a good PowerPoint, then my presentation is going to be crap. But then the other part of it was I was traveling the early part of the week, And I wanted to get it done on Saturday, and I rarely work on Saturdays because then when I got back from my travels, I wouldn't be stressing out about doing it and getting it ready prior to the presentation. So there was like a double thing going on there.
Yeah. And here's the thing is, like, I don't work in your field, but I know we talked about some of these ideas transposed to people who are leaders in these different fields, right?
Yep.
So maybe what it is you're looking at, I'm in a competitive environment. Like every job I'm going up for, there are 5 of the same competitors that are going for them, right?
Absolutely.
And you can keep doing the same things. Like you can be the tennis player who keeps competing against the same guys at the top of the singles tournaments, right?
Yep.
But the one that wins is the one that goes deep and goes, you know what? I deeply understand what Eric is doing now. And I see the vulnerability in that. And I know what it is Steven's not offering. And that comes from deep thought. That doesn't come from just grinding and running as fast as you can. Like you said, you had a great question when we were emailing about how can you get addicted to that? Like high stress, lots of decisions being made. It is addictive. It's fun and addictive. It's like, playing a video game. But you were going to say something. What were you going to say?
Yeah. Let me ask you. So let's say I'm going through that process of analyzing my competition, let's say.
Yep.
And I want to get into a flow state where I can do that.
Yep.
Is it something where I approach it with questions? How do I frame it? Or is it something where I just let my subconscious work on it as I'm considering competitor X? Maybe I'm focusing on the owner of the business or the types of projects that they build. How do I approach that?
It's a good question because I think what you're saying, to reflect this back to you, is you're saying, how granular and descriptive is it? Like, can I be focused on a general thing of like, man, like Steven keeps getting these jobs I'm going up for. Like, what is it about him? Or can it be very specific? Like, hey, man, the corner of 3rd and Main, that project, what's the thing that's going to win that project, right?
Yep.
So it can be either, as long as there is a direction. Because flow is not when you are just daydreaming.
Okay. So then I need to be able to set a clear direction, a good specific direction that I'm going to be spending time thinking about.
Yep.
Is it possible for me to be in a flow state as I'm in a conversation with someone?
Generally not, but that is a general comment because let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Some of the research done on flow was done on like jazz musicians who get into flow as like a quartet or a trio, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that they're chatting like, hey, Steven, how are you? Oh, great, Eric. But it's that thing where they measured them and saw that as they drop into improv, their prefrontal cortex activity really drops. Like they become one with the music, one with the quartet or the trio. So conversation, I don't think that's a popular thing because it's generally a solo thing unless you're becoming one unit.
Yeah, let me explore that with you because I think one of the reasons why that's the case is if you're going to get in a flow state with people, there has to be a similar level of competency and understanding of the topic, so to speak. Is that right? Because like if you put me in a jazz environment with expert musicians, I can sit on the drums and I can play a little beat, right? But
we hope.
Yeah, right. But my vocabulary is so limited that at a certain point, I have no capacity to improvise with them because my vocabulary, music-wise, is so limited.
Yes. And this goes back to some of those seminal thoughts on flow is he noticed it is not just having a task that you think is meaningful,
right?
But it is that you have skills that apply.
Yes.
And you are operating at a level that challenges you. Like to use that Michael Jordan example where Michael Jordan talks about like when I'm in flow, it's just me and the ball. Or when I'm in the zone, I think is the way.
Yeah, the zone. He used the zone.
When in the zone, it's just me and the ball. It's very interesting because you unpack that one sentence. And what he's saying is, when I'm in flow, it actually doesn't matter about the spectators, the scoreboard, even the defenders, because if I control this ball,
right,
I will do the things that show up on a highlight reel 30 years later, right? So he has skills that apply. He's being challenged. Now, if it were Michael Jordan playing an exhibition at his kid's high school, he's not going to be in flow because he's not going to be challenged, right?
Right.
So it has to be something like that where you have a task, you have skills that apply to the task, and you're doing it at a level that challenges you. How do I elicit for myself greatness as opposed to, hey man, I'm just filing the reports. Like you're not going to get into flow filing the report.
Think about the last time you promoted someone into a leadership role and it failed.
Why did it fail? I can tell you one reason. People know how to build projects, but they don't know how to build and lead teams of people. Construction comes with its challenges that only insiders truly understand. Generic leadership training doesn't cut it. You need a program to train your leaders built specifically for construction professionals led by an industry expert. And my online course, The Shift, is exactly that course. It has 5 modules. It'll teach your people how to control their calendars and reduce stress and embrace chaos and accomplish their critical tasks. It will teach them the 3 essential messages they have to communicate every day in order to motivate and lead their team effectively. It'll show them how to build and lead a high-performing team, give them a framework for running effective meetings so they'll be able to solve problems in less than an hour, and also give them a higher perspective on their leadership that will enable them to work on the business and on their teams and not get stuck in the weeds micromanaging. So go out to my website, theshift.constructiongenius.com, read all about the course, and then enroll yourself and your leaders in the course, and I guarantee that it will transform your leadership. If it does not, you take the whole course and you didn't get benefit from it, you just send me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com, and I will cheerfully refund you 100% of your money. I'm really confident this course will transform your leadership. So again, go out to the website, theshift.constructiongenius.com, learn more about the course, and start taking it today.
Let me just go back one more time to this idea of the walk, because one goes on a walk and obviously, if you're walking, you're competent at walking and things like that. How does that relate to getting into the flow state? Is it just that's the environment I've chosen and that's a good one for me because I can focus in that environment?
Very much so. And it goes back to that idea of like the default mode network in your brain and the executive mode network. The executive mode network being busy with doing the dishes, walking, driving, showering, often gives your default mode network the opportunity to go, I have a crazy thought. You want to hear it?
There you go. Okay, I get that. Why do you think people struggle with authenticity when they're in this flow state?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that. I'm not sure I understand that entirely. What is the struggle with authenticity?
Yeah, so, when you're in the flow state, right, you have to give yourself permission to play with the ideas that you come up with. Yeah. And I think oftentimes what gets people out of flow state or out of really deep problem solving is that they don't give themselves the permission to go there once the idea comes up. So what can I do?
Oh, okay. That's okay. I didn't understand. That's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a story from film that I hope illustrates the answer, which is, so I worked very hard, rose up to the point, I was an executive vice president at DreamWorks for Kurtzman Orsi, the guys who wrote Transformers 1 and 2, Star Trek 11, Mission Impossible 3, ton of stuff, right? Great guys.
Right.
And I'll tell you, as much as you work in film, it becomes an industry, just like your industry.
Yep.
You go to the same premieres, they're work events. They're photographed to look like they're these glamorous things. They're work events where you're bumping the exact same people from work. You're like, hey, Larry, you read that script? Yeah, I read that script. It's okay. So I will tell you straight up, the first time I actually had a meeting in Steven Spielberg's office, right? And I'm there at the studio on the lot. We have a bungalow. But there was definitely a moment where there's a project that I had brought in, and we were sitting at his, the Southwestern Adobe beautiful Amblin compound, right? So we're in the little conference room just off his personal office. And I had that moment of like, OMFG, this is where my life has led me. Like, would not have guessed this when I was 16.
Yep.
And the chairman of the studio, Stacy's there, the president of the studio, Holly, the writers, they're all around this table, and we're debating this thing. It's around an alien movie, right? A movie with aliens in it. Now, we're sitting 3 feet to my left is Steven Spielberg, who has done some alien movies, right? Huge, massively successful alien movies. And he says something akin to, and I'm going to, out of respect to him, fictionalize what he said, right? He said something akin to like, okay, so the next scene, it's where the alien comes to the wall and we realize the alien's like got a problem with dust or something there. Of course, the writers are like, Steven said, the aliens are allergic to dust. Someone comes to the room like a coffee boy, that sort of like role.
Right.
And in the course of doing that says, actually, I feel like we saw the through the wall with the dust thing last year in this other movie. What if it were this other thing? And I thought to myself, oh my God, that's really cute. That's the last time we see the coffee boy alive. He'll be put into little pieces in the dumpster, like contradicting Steven Spielberg. Steven, without blinking, said, yeah, that's better. We should go with that. And the conversation just moved forward.
Yeah.
And it was the best example I ever saw of completely egoless focus on the win. I don't care if it's my idea.
Yep.
I just want the team to win.
Yeah, that's excellent.
And you have to be confident to do that, because when you are insecure, you're precious with your ideas. You're like, Eric, it has to be this way because I love this, as opposed to what's best.
So that's interesting, because that takes me back to our earlier conversation about the executive you were describing who had the intuition about the person who wasn't obvious for doing the trailer, right?
Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And by the way, Bart, that he plucked out of the chorus line.
Yeah.
Bart is a writer-producer at Fox now. He has made a career out of writing promos and trailers. And Jeff, to his credit, who's still a friend, was completely right about the kid in the vault.
Why do you think he was right? How did he develop that intuition, do you think? Where did that come from?
I can tell you, I think now that I've seen them both grow up, he saw Bart as a young version of himself. He's like, that's what I looked like at 22.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Interesting. So tell us a little bit more. I mean, you started in film. Tell us a little bit more about your business now and what you're doing.
So basically, after selling one tech company and thinking I was smarter than I was, as one does, having two failed tech companies where you're like, oh my God, I suck maybe more than I actually suck, right? The thing that stood out for me was this. I was like, you know what? I have been very lucky to be around people who operate like at that level, like the $1 million screenwriters, top directors, great engineers, fantastic designers. What is it I've learned? Because the universe has given me these rooms where I've sat there and watched people who are at the top of their game.
Yeah.
And this thing about flow really stood out to me. So, you do the reading. I'm lazy. I'm just straight up, right?
Yeah.
I did the reading. I was like, oh, so like you brought up, music can help you get into this flow state. Oh, time blocking help you. Oh, having a timer. Oh, getting feedback on how you work. I was like, I'm not going to in the morning when I have my 2 hours of flow time.
Yeah.
Open 5 apps to have like Brain FM running over here. I'm not going to do that. Best case, I'll hit play and then I'm going to get to work.
Right.
And I was like, I'm going to build that website. And that's what I built. Those tools together, the big play button, play, away you go. I'll tell you this. I have a 4-month-old downstairs, right?
You're right.
Some point he and his eventual little sister are going to figure out Daddy did something for work. This is going to be the thing I tell them more than any movie I worked on. Die Hard 5, awful movie. Wolverine 2, okay movie. Like Star Trek 11, okay. Like this is the thing. I'd be like, I helped people do something great with their own lives.
That's cool. What's the website for it?
It's called the Sukha, which means the happiness in Sanskrit. So it's TheSukha.co. The Sukha company, the happiness company.
That's great. That's awesome.
Probably do too much yoga. My wife was like, you should call it something in Sanskrit. I was like, okay.
There you go. Awesome. Well, we'll put the links in the show notes and make sure people can connect with that. Any other place that they can connect with you?
Yeah, I'll say if there's anything that I've said that someone wants to ask a question, my email address is really public. You're welcome to email me. It's Steven, Steven, at thesukha, TheSukha.co. Email me if you're like, hey man, is there a blog post I can read about this? Or what's a great tool to use? It doesn't have to be about my company. Just ask a question. We're all busy. I'm not going to write you back this history of my life. You don't care and I don't have time. But I will send you a blog post like, oh, Cal Newport wrote a fantastic thing about exactly that. Read this. It'll help you.
Awesome. Steven, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Thank you very much.
Eric, this was so much fun. Thank you. I hope someone enjoyed it. Thanks for listening.
Right on. Thank you for listening to today's episode with Steven. Feel free to contact him. Links are in the show notes. Hope you enjoyed this discussion. Share it with other people who you think would benefit from listening to it. And I hope you get a chance to get into some flow state yourself so that you can work on some of your toughest problems with that intuitive mind that you have that has the deep experience that you need to come up with the solutions that will most benefit you and your business. So I'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity, and to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.